Hi, can you hear me? All right, cool. I'm Malina Saval from Variety. As you just saw, this is a very special, beautiful, and important film, and I'm really honored to interview the people directly involved with making it all possible and happen. So, and I apologize in advance if I butcher their names, because as you know, they are Norwegian. Paul Greengrass, though, is not Norwegian, so that's easy. Director, Paul Greengrass. And Anders Danielsen Lie, who played Breivik in the film. Jonas Strand Gravli, Vilhar. Again, apologies. Seda Witt, who played Lara. And our director of photography, our DP, Pål Ulvik Rokseth. And they can correct me. So, you know, my first question is, a lot of people might say this is a hard film to watch. What do you say, Paul, to those people who say this is a very difficult film experience? I'm not even sure if I want to go there.
Well, it's a disturbing subject, for sure. But I think the world is quite disturbing right now, I would say. And although I think, obviously, the first 35 minutes are, I think ultimately as a film it's inspiring. I think it's the story of how Norway fought for her democracy against this terrible right-wing terrorist attack. And I think that story speaks to all of us across Europe and North America right now. I think we're facing some difficult times.
Anybody else? Has anybody else maybe said to anybody in the cast or Paul and the DP, have they said, this is such a difficult subject matter, I don't know if I want to go sit through this, I just want to be entertained? What's your response to those people?
Well, see it maybe and put up your own mind. It's difficult for us to force upon people to see it, but I know I have some friends that says it's difficult, yes, but I think it's important to see it.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
I was thinking that I think it's a good thing if you could use one of the most accessible, popular mediums of all, the feature film format, to tell an important story. And because it shouldn't be all entertainment and popcorn. It should also be a medium where you can treat difficult subject matter and stories that are the important stories of our time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Now, you're all Norwegian, with the exception of Paul. Do you remember where you were when this attack happened? And do you remember what your thoughts were when it happened?
Yeah, of course. I think all Norwegians know exactly where they were and who they were with and their thoughts that exact day. I was at a friend's house, and I remember the total confusion that followed that day, and that you had no idea if there were more attacks or if it was Al-Qaeda or who was behind this attack. And it was a very confusing day indeed.
Anybody else have any feelings about that day? And if so, did you use that feeling that you might have experienced on that day in your performance? You know, I mean, how crazy it is to have experienced learning about this happening in real time and then years later be a part of a film.
Yeah, I remember well where I was at the time, but I think that I wasn't one of the ones that were affected, like personally, at these attacks. But I think as an actor, it's you have to have a whole different approach to a role like this, because talking to the real Villiers before we started shooting, and it's unbelievable. It's impossible for me to imagine how it actually felt to be on that island and to experience these attacks. So it was, even though I'm Norwegian and I knew this story so well, and I really felt it had an impact on me when it happened, but. To do those scenes on the island and also doing the scenes in the aftermath of what happened, it was really hard. It was and it was important for me to talk a lot with Villiers and listen to his story from him.
Also, what's so terrifying about his story is that he continues to live it because he's living still with parts of the bullets, right? So. Did you speak to him about that, and how is he able to just live in the moment? I was just thinking about that consistently as I watched the film. This is a person for whom he is not able to put it completely behind him because literally a part of that attack is inside of his physical body, and that must be just so terrifying to live with every day.
Yeah, he said that it was terrifying, and the fact that he knew that something could happen like. Every single second, he never knew if he was going to live or die in a long period of time after the attack. So I think it was terrifying. And also when he got the message that the fragment had like capsuled, so it wasn't dangerous anymore. Yeah. That was maybe, even though that was a relief to know that he wasn't in danger anymore, it also were terrifying because that was the first time he realized that now I'm going to live like nothing happened, like everything is normal again, and that was also terrifying for him, I think.
Absolutely. For Anders, you play the person in the movie that, for lack of a better word, the villain, so to speak, but he represents a lot of what's terrible in society today. How did you prepare for that performance, and was there anything, as an actor, you love what you do, was there anything that you could take from this experience that was joyful, or were you grew in some way as an actor? Were you able to find any sort of joy in playing this character, or was it just so difficult to embody this pure force of evil?
Well, joy is not the right word, but I think that to me it felt meaningful to be a part of this film, because I when I read the script and when I talked to Paul, I was very confident that he wanted to make a film to remember the victims, those who passed away and those who were injured, and that he was also curious to ask questions, to try to find out why this happened, that these people were not killed by some mysterious force of evil, but that this was actually one of the most politically motivated terrorist attacks in recent memory. And whether we like it or not, he was a lone wolf terrorist, but there are many people out there in the world who share his ideas, and far-right political extremism is on the rise, and we just have to confront those ideas. I think we, personally, I believe in freedom of speech, and I think we have to use our best reasoning to show that these ideas are false. So it felt like an important film to be a part of, and I was not thinking so much about my part of it or the role I was set to play. The only thing I knew was that it felt like a huge responsibility to try to create a truthful portrait, and I didn't want to censor anything. I just wanted it to be as truthful as possible.
Can I just talk about that a minute?
Absolutely,
I remember very early on when before I'd actually started writing, but I went to the island. Well, first thing I did was asked the family's permission, and then they arranged for me to go to Utøya Island. We obviously didn't shoot on the island itself, though the island that we shot on looks identical. But I actually went to Utøya Island itself, and I was told the most wonderful story, which in many ways summed up why I wanted to make this film. The young man who runs Utøya Island now, manages the facilities and so forth, explained that after it was all over, the young people, about a year and a half later, after the trial was over, had to decide what to do with Utøya, which for decades and decades, really since the Second World War, had been a place where young people in Norway had come to enjoy fun and camp and, and all the rest of it, but also think about the world and think about civic leadership and so forth. And they voted, had a big debate and voted and decided that it was fundamental to them that Utøya remained open, that if they closed it and it became simply a memorial to those who had died, that is not what they would have wanted, because it would be handing Breivik a victory. Mm-hmm. And so today, it still is a campsite. Young people still come all the time. It's a study centre too, where young people come and discuss political extremism and the perils and problems of it, particularly in our world, across the world. And the black building that we depict there is now coated with 77 large columns which represent each of the people who died, and then outside it some 400 or 500 smaller stays, that each of which represents a survivor, and they call it the guarded house because the survivors guard those who are no longer with them. And he said, we all felt that we have to enjoy life. And we talked about how it would be if I made the film, and I remember saying to you that we have to enjoy our work when we're making this film. Take it desperately seriously, but we would be handing a victory if we didn't enjoy our comradeship, enjoy the collective, beauty of making a film, and then we intensely try and reflect on this subject and do our best work.
You're known as even when you're doing these features, you base a lot of it of your work on real life events, and there's a very much a documentary feel to the films that you make. You also, on the other hand, do the Bourne films, slightly different, but when you do these types of movies, and they feel so organic and so real and so natural, but at the same time, I'm imagining everything is directed so with a particular idea and aesthetic in mind. So how do you balance, or rather, how do you extract from, your actors, and just in terms of directing, how do you make it so natural, but at the same time have a vision that, did you storyboard a lot of these scenes beforehand, or did you just?
I don't tend to do that myself. I mean, I plan meticulously, and I'll plan sequences meticulously. As you have to know what you're trying to do. But films do many things. I mean, I love making entertaining films. I love making Bourne movies. I love a car chase. You might have noticed. I love a big fight. I love all those things. There's nothing better that I like in life than going to the movies on a Saturday night with a bowl of popcorn, but it's not nice. I feel that I need to, for myself as a filmmaker, from time to time, think about the way the world is. And I've got young adult children, and I think we're in a very troubling moment politically with this huge unprecedented shift towards extremist politics at the moment. And so I make films, so that's what I try and do in terms of the rest of it, you trust in your actors, and you trust in, and I was very blessed in this film to work with all Norwegian actors, none of whom I knew, didn't know any of their work, but, you know, and also a Norwegian crew, and, you know, a lot of it, the naturalism is down to that gentleman on the end there, Paul, who we'd never met each other. He seemed frighteningly young to me. And we just clicked from the first moment because he knew how to photograph this film, you know.
Yeah, I was about the photography. It's so beautiful because it's just, you know, tonally you've got those, you know, those dim grays and muted blues. When you came to the film, did you have an aesthetic idea of how you wanted to see the film photographed? Did you collaborate along the way? What was that collaboration process like? It's a question for Paul.
Well, it's a huge collaboration of, you know, with Paul and also with all the other departments. But I think the approach on the film was from the start very truthfully in a way. We had to kind of recreate some of the scenes that we know from TV and, you know, we've seen happening in the real world. So it's important to be, you know, truthful to how to reconstruct them. But no, we you know, natural and truthful way to tell stories is, you know, you have to if you in some of the situation put yourself into a real situation, how will you tell the story if you could only shoot it once, you know? Let the actors be open in the room. They walk wherever they want to go. Follow them instead of setting limitation on where to put them. You know, let them go in and out of lights. It's difficult, but at the same time also in great. I can't find the word, but deliberating to follow the actors. You know,
a lot of the time you're studying how light actually falls, really. I mean, that's the key, isn't it, Paul? You know, to look at how, you know, if you look at this room here, light, it's available, you know, it's lit, it's available light for this space, and it's falling in certain places. You know, there's some spill there, and there's some spill here, and then there's a little few pieces there, and then there's a different light there. And often what you're looking for is to allow what is there to dare, and it takes courage, I think, as a cinematographer, to really observe how the light is falling and let that be your guide. And it's not the same. I'm not saying by that you just shoot it. That's not what I'm saying. But you work with the warp and weave of the light that's there.
I was going to ask about when, during what seasons you filmed the movie, because obviously there's snow and then there's like summer represented. And as we know in Norway, there's periods where there's lots of light and there's periods where there's no light. Did you have to manipulate that at all? Like, were there any scenes that you were filming in the middle of the night to make it look like it was early evening, or did you have to?
Well, again, you know, available light means that, you know, we have to use the available light. But of course, if you shoot an interior scene and you know that you will go over a certain amount of hours because you cannot do it in 1 or 2, which is the light, then you have to start to recreate kind of, you know, natural light, which sometimes is easy and sometimes is difficult. And but it's also a plan, you know, when we did with Chris Carreras, you know, he's the first AD, you know, we plan stuff so the stuff you see out the windows, we shoot first, and then we can always turn around and do it if we don't. But we try to do the whole scene in one, so.
The truth is, we were shooting in winter time, and there's about 12 and a half minutes of light.
That's what I'm thinking. So even the island scenes were during the winter.
Generally, Paul's being very diplomatic. I'd say, if we shoot this side, can you light the rest of it to make it look like daylight and go slightly white? Say you're kidding me, but no.
The book One of Us, how much of it, on which the film is based on the book, it's also based on real life events, but how much of an influence was that particular book in the making of this film?
Very much. Usna Sierstad's book, One of Us, is the best book about the subject, and it's a very meticulous, long, and rather beautiful book, and it's comprehensive. It's the story of. It's really the story, actually, of Anders Breivik from birth, and the two friends of Vilja, Simon and Anders, who died. It's really their story and how they grew up and collided, then on and through the trial and out the other side. And she's a very considerable figure in Norway, and it's a brilliant book. And we had lots of discussions. I just felt that for me, the film, and any film, you have to choose the story that you want to tell, and no film can tell the story of everything. I just felt that the story that I wanted to tell was the story of what happened afterwards. Of course, the first half hour or so has to portray what happened, because you have to, to a certain extent, in the film, live through that to get to what the film's about, which is how Norway fought for her democracy, how one family, these two young people, came through the experience and what effect it had on their hopes and dreams and idealism, and that in the end meant for me centering the story on Vilja, who's in the book, but he's a much less important character than Simon and Anders, because I wanted to create this structure where you have, I think, what is the choice for young people today increasingly. There's no doubt that many young people across your country, across the UK where I live, across Europe, are increasingly angry, I think, and feel excluded, feel the system doesn't work for them, troubled by the changing world, and of course all their fears and anxieties and angers are amplified and echoed by social media. And I think it's part of the and they're starting to think of solutions that are beyond the democratic norms as I've always understood them in my life. And I think that there is a struggle coming in amongst young people about what sort of world they want to live in, and that struggle, I think, is exemplified by Vilja Hansen on the one hand and Anders Breivik on the other.
For Seda and Jonas, this was your first film for both of you, and you both carried the film in so many ways. Without you, this film would not have resonated in the way that it did. I believe that. And you had those amazing courtroom scenes where you had to essentially recite monologues. Were those difficult, and how did you prepare for that scene particularly?
Yeah, of course, they were very difficult to do. I spoke to Lara a lot before doing the scene, and it's quite close to what she actually said that day, and it's a representation of her strength to walk into that room and to face the man who killed her sister, and she has been the most amazing girl to talk to and to discuss things with, and it's also in the film because she not long after the attacks she went to the hospital to see the other victims and to check on them, and that has been so inspiring to speak to her about that, and so the courtroom scene I know was very important for her journey and for her to get some sort of closure, and also to speak not only for her and her family but also for many refugees who come to a country to seek security and for some reason doesn't get it. So it was a tough scene to do, but it's not possible to imagine what it was like because we did that scene in the exact room that it happened. Yeah. So it it was so inspiring to talk to her, and I felt really honored to get to portray her in this film.
Do you remember how many takes you did of that scene, Paul? Is it several takes or?
Yeah, I mean, a few, but I mean, they were both fantastic.
Yeah.
The way they nailed it. It's a funny thing, the relationship, you know, filmmaker, actor, director, actor. There's a certain point, and it's true, I think, of big scenes. Of course, you can prepare together, you know, and you prepare and you think about what you're doing, and you know, try and get mentally prepared and think through, you know, how it might go. But in the end, the single thing that you can do on my side is just believe in an actor, believe in their ability to do it, and that's the best thing you can do. You know, in the end, it's a little like sports. You know, when an actor walks across that white line, only they can do that special thing that only actors can do, to sit in a space, be photographed, and literally create an alternative reality with sufficient intensity and conviction that, you know, months later, thousands of miles away, you'll watch and at some level believe. That's a beautiful artistry, and it's performance art of a beautiful time, and only the actor can do it. Yeah. And what you have to do is believe in them with your heart and soul. That's the thing that I think that they find. I can't speak. You must ask them.
We have a couple more minutes. Quickly, that scene for you, how was it? And then I have one last question to end on.
No, I think it was of course really hard to do, both because I knew that it was an important scene for the film, but also because I felt like that was the most important scene for me to do good, because I wanted to show how brave the real Viljar was, to actually go into that room and sit down face to face with the guy who tried to kill him and shot him 5 times, and so it was important to really show his focus when it came to his journey in the recovery. And yeah, as Seda said, it was shot in the actual room, so it was a lot of emotions just because of that. And yeah, but it was, I think, one of the best things when we were doing this film was that Paul gave us so much time in every single scene and every single situation, so we didn't have to rush anything. And when you get a lot of time to just be in a situation, something you feel more free, and you don't feel like you have to rush anything and get to some specific point. So that was really good.
Just one last quick question. The film is going to be on Netflix. It's October 10th, right? Is that the date?
Yeah.
October 10th. So, but basically, it's the model. The model of this film premiering is such that people all over the world are going to be able to access it at the same time. In Norway, in the States, what do you hope that people get out of this film that are watching it? What do you hope the messages that they come away with, or what kind of inspiration, et cetera, do you hope that they glean from watching this movie? I guess anyone can answer that.
Well, my hope is that people can see this film as a local story with a global message, that they can see it as a cautionary tale about the worst possible consequences of political extremism. And speaking for my part as well, I think we need to know more about the power and danger of radicalization, whether it's political, ideological, or religious radicalization. So I hope it's a film that can be, I know it's disturbing to watch it, but I hope it can be meaningful for a lot of people in many countries, and that ultimately it's a film that was made to honor the victims of the 22nd of July.
Thank you all so much for such a beautiful film and for being here.
Thank you.